Good afternoon, everybody. And if you're viewing from the US, good morning. Thanks for joining us. We've got quite a packed program, so I'm going to keep this introduction short. My name's Charles Drayson. I'm going to hand over shortly to Mark Settle from our US office. I've worked with Mark for quite a few years now in various roles. And the one thing about Mark is basically he's the guy who can make reality make reality happen for you. He's a guru at making these solutions actually work. Just before I do that, if you were with us a few minutes ago when we had the video playing, you'll see that we mentioned that if you join Legito, you're joining a community. And I just want to mention one thing that's coming up to cement that. On 16th of June in Prague, we've got the Legito Power Up Conference. So if you haven't already seen the details about that, do look out for it. It's going to be a fabulous event. It's a face-to-face event, way different to remote sessions, good though these are. So please do have a look at that and see if you can join us. So I'm going to hand over right now to Mark. We are going to collect questions during the webinar and I'll collate them at the end. So please feel free to submit anything that's bothering you during the time and we'll do what we can to get to them at the end. And if there's any left and we run out of time, we'll follow up afterwards. Mark, welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Charles. I appreciate the introduction and looking forward to that Power Up conference later this year. So as we get started, what I want to do is first give it a brief introduction to Legito. So we may have some joining who are unfamiliar with Legito, who aren't Legito customers. We appreciate you joining today and learning a little bit. We are definitely going to do a walkthrough demonstration for the majority of this webinar today. And before we do that, I want to introduce you to our company. Legito was founded in 2014 by a lawyer/technologist. So our founder at the time was practicing law, creating documents on a regular basis, very transactional, and thought there has to be a better way to create these documents. Being the technologist that he is, created a way. Started to build what he called smart documents. And that turned into a product that is Legito today. And now we have customers in over 50 countries. We're used by Fortune 500 companies around the world. And you can see a few of the logos there of our customers. The core functionality of Legito is what we call a smart document workspace. That is really all around document creation and management and workflow process. So we have smart document drafting or document automation, which allows you to take a document and turn it into a template. But then once you have that template, you're going to generate a document with that template, but you may need to walk through an approval process. You may need to negotiate with a third party. You may need to have some redlining internally as you go through that approval process. You may want to track deadlines. You may want to manage that document and know what's happened with it along the way. And our smart document workspace creates and adds all of that functionality to that template. So beyond just document automation, you get this powerful workflow tool, this ability to track and manage the things that you need to within your business related to that document. And so that is the smart document workspace. Today, we're going to look at one of those smart document workspaces in a specific use case in taking a document, creating a template, and the workflow around it to utilize within a business. So let's talk about that. So the use case we're going to use today is around a non-disclosure agreement. This is a document that is not a very complex document. I'll talk about complex documents and how they can be handled in Legito, but today we're going to use a relatively simple document, a non-disclosure agreement. But this is a document that almost everybody uses in your business. If you do business, you're likely going to need non-disclosure agreements as you work with other businesses or other parties. And so our use case today is take a current NDA document that's being used within a business, automate it to create the template, manage a workflow approval process around that, and e-signature and storage of that document so that I can manage it in the future. We're going to use two personas today. I'm going to use a fictitious person, Janet Smith, and I'm going to use her. She's going to be the primary user really that you'll see today. When I'm in the browser, I'll use Google Chrome for her. We're going to suppose she's the operations manager at Legito and is going to be tasked with building out this template. And then I'll be using Edge as myself. I'll be the approver for this document and the one who's asked Janet to do this work. And so we'll see that here in just a moment. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to exit this. And what I want to do first is let's look at an email. We'll just maximize this email. So let's say Janet receives an email from Mark. And Janet and Mark have already had a conversation. So we've had a conversation about this task. I've sent her an NDA document that I've now marked up. So I say I've taken an existing document we've had and I've added comments about where the input fields and questions and optional language should be. Can you create a template? And then I've also identified for her what the process is for this document. So it needs to go in from a draft stage into a review stage, which will require approval by either Mark or John. Then it will go through for signature, and then it will be an executed document. And then we'll have a terminated stage as well, so that we can move it into a state, a separate stage if it's an expired document. So Janet's got this task now. Take this document, turn it into a template, and create this workflow. Now, I like to, if I'm Janet, what I'm thinking first is I'll do the easy thing first. Let me get my approval set up, my workflow set up, and then I'll create my template and assign it to that workflow. And so I'm actually going to start with the workflow. So I'll show you how easy it is to create that workflow process that we need in Legito. And then we'll look at this document and create it as a template. So to do that, I'm going to log into Legito. So in Google Chrome, I'm Janet logged into my Legito workspace. And this is a very simple, bare bones, smart document workspace that we see here. Maybe Janet has just started using it within the business, and all she's got right now is a single template, a contractor agreement that she's used to create a few documents. So now we're going to add a new template to this, a non-disclosure agreement, and we're going to set up a workflow. And like I said, we're going to set up that workflow first. So Janet is an administrator in this workspace, and so she can go to Settings, Workflows, and create a new workflow. So I'm going to create a new workflow, and I'm going to call it NDA workflow. We're just going to get this workflow ready for when we add in the template. So our workflow editor in Legito is nice and easy and straightforward. It's simply click and drag and drop. So I need 5 stages. So if we recall from the email, I need to draft, review, signature, and then I need executed and terminated. So I can add my 5 stages. I can add a stage with a flow in between the stages by simply clicking that plus and add my new stage. And let's go ahead and add all 5 stages, and then we'll configure those stages specifically. This will be our review stage. Then we'll add another stage, and that will be our ready for signature. We'll add 4th stage, which will be the executed stage. And then we'll add a terminated stage. Now we can just configure each of those stages and the flows in between them. So let's say I do want to be able to go very linearly, except for when I review, I may want to be able to move that back into draft. If I decided I'm not quite ready, you can see these flows. I've got some arrows and handles. I can actually make this as pretty as I want. Now let's go ahead and configure each of the stages. When I click on a specific stage, you can see I have different properties that I can configure on this stage. I don't want to be able to share or do anything really but download this document in the draft stage. So I'm going to uncheck all of those other options. In the review stage, maybe I want track changes mandatory in this stage, but I don't really need to start signing yet, and I don't need to send deadline reminders, but I'll leave the other options on. And let's change the color of our review stage. We'll make it purple. Ready for signature. Here we do want to start signing, and here we probably also want to lock the document, so we're not making any changes to it. Don't need deadline reminders yet. We'll only remind any deadlines when it's in the executed stage. And so we'll uncheck that, and we'll make this one blue. Executed, we'll make green. And of course, when it's executed, we want it locked, so no signing. But we do want deadline reminders in this stage. And then terminated, we'll make, I don't know, this color, and we'll lock the document there. And no need for deadline reminders once it's already terminated as well. And we can turn that off. So now I've got my different stages with the properties set in that stage. The last thing I need to do is I need to make sure that I can approve it. So when it's in the review stage, I want the ability to appoint someone to approve it. And so like I asked Janet needs to make sure she adds Mark and John as approvers for this document. So the way to add that approval is to just click the flow between 2 stages where I want that approval. And you can see on the right-hand side, I have the ability to add an approval. So I'm going to add that approval. We'll drag that down. Again, we can reformat this how we want with these little arrows if we want to make it a little prettier. Then I can click on that approval and modify it to configure that approval. I want to make this a fixed approval, meaning the user who's sending it for approval can't choose who approves it. It's automatically set to a fixed number of users. I'm going to say a single approval is required. So every approver doesn't need to approve this, only one of them. And then I'm going to add the users. So we can search for Mark. And we can search for John. So click in the field. But now we're going to add those 2 users. And then the last thing I want to do is if this is rejected, I want to go back to the draft stage. And now I've got a nice workflow. So there's one more thing I like to change. It's not necessary, but I think it makes it a little bit easier to use in a workflow is when this is ready for signature, we're going to actually send this out to sign in DocuSign. So we're going to show that I can use this with an ESignature solution. Well, when this document is signed, I want to automatically move into the executed stage. And so what I can do is I can click on that flow, and you can see there's some options for manual or automatic activation of a workflow stage. I can even do things like automatically move to a workflow stage based on certain criteria, like the value of the contract is over a certain amount or some other item as well. But we're going to say we're going to move automatically to the executed stage when the document was signed. With that, our workflow is complete. So we've got a nice workflow. We're going to use this workflow once we add in the template. So Janet's got her workflow ready. She's like, I already got to check one box in just a couple of minutes here. Now let's go look at the document and build our template. So we'll go ahead and minimize this. We'll go back to our email. Let's minimize this. So what I like to do, and Janet is going to do here, is she's going to grab the document and pull it into a folder. And then a good practice is I want to kind of keep that original document with the comments as is, and then work with a copy of that document, maybe to do a little bit of markup or whatever changes I want to make to that document before I import it into Legito. So I'm just going to do a simple copy paste with Control-C, Control-V. We'll make a copy of that, and we'll call it markup instead of copy. Really good practice so you can have that original document handy to look at the comments as they were sent. So we're going to open up the markup version of this document first so that we can make some changes. So we can see the document that Mark sent to me. Janet can review all of the comments that I made for her, and she can see where the input fields need to go. This is a pretty basic document. So just scrolling through, an NDA is not a very complex document, about 6 pages here. Not a lot of logic or input fields, but there are some input fields here in the document. And Janet might notice right away, and this is a good example, markup is usually incomplete. So the person who's taking a look at a document template that's marked up by someone, they need to be aware to read through the document to see where markup might have been missed. And so you can see there's nice comments on where some input fields are up earlier, but this obviously needs to be some input as well, right? This is the disclosing party's address and contact information. All right, so Janet can now go through and start to mark up this document. Now, a couple of comments before I get into marking up this document. There are a few things you want to look at before you ever import a document into Legito. One is you may choose to mark it up, and I'm going to do that with some of this document today with some syntax that will automatically import some input fields for you. The second is the formatting. So Legito, as we'll see, uses our own template editor in the cloud. So you're not working in Microsoft Word, you're working in a Legito template editor. We import the document content into our own structure. And so in doing that, it's got a lot of value to it of things that we can do as far as storing the data, working with it, manipulating it, being able to export to different file types other than just Microsoft Word, and not being tied to Microsoft Word for template editing. But we do depend on styles to get that properly outputted styled document in Word. And so it's important to have your document styled well. If we look at the styles here, you can see this document is already using some custom styles that are prefixed with Legito as a name. That's not Legito specific as company styles. That's just a custom style with that name that I've created for the purposes of this demonstration. So this is a well-styled document. You know, numbered paragraphs have a specific style. Language, all of the different language in the document uses specific styles. So those styles will import well into Legito. So I don't have to do any styling work here as Janet to get this document ready. But I can mark it up to take advantage of this markup language before I import it into Legito. So we're going to do that with a few fields. We won't do it for all of the fields. One note, as I go through and mark this up, I'm not going to talk about all of the different field types. I'm just going to add the markup and I'll mention some of them. But there are 5 or 6 different field types that you can mark up in this document before you import it to get you that bit of a head start. And then also the comments will automatically be removed from the document. So I don't have to worry about removing those comments before I import the document. So the first thing here is the agreement date. So we'll just put a date there in brackets. So these square brackets are what you use in Legito to mark up a specific field. And this will be a text input field. And then we can actually put a prompt with this after a colon. So I'll call this disclosing party. This will be a drop down for the governing law of the disclosing party. A drop down in Legito is a select. And then I can put a colon and actually put the options for the select. I'm not going to type 50 states here as a possibility. I'll just type in a couple. I'll do Georgia because I'm here, and I'll do New York. But we could put all 50 states in there. Then for the corporation, this might be an entity type. So we'll make that a select as well. And we'll put in corporation, limited liability, company, and partnership. And lastly, we might have a text input here, the short name. All right, so I've got my text inputs there. And so I've got some markup here that's going to automatically create those for me. I'm going to look at the rest of the document here. I've got some conditional language, ask the user a specific question and then merge the appropriate paragraph. I don't need to mark that up. We'll take care of that in the template editor. I've got some language here. One note here, it says, hey, would be great if the user could add additional paragraphs here. So if I were a user and wanted to add an additional paragraph in a document, I would just hit return and start typing this in. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to put a text input markup here. And I'm going to make that conditional and add the logic to it in the template editor when we get there. Now I'm not going to mark them all up, but like I said, I'm going to go ahead and take care of this section down here that wasn't marked up so that I don't have to create those fields manually. So I just replaced, let me just undo really quickly. ABC Company is the disclosing party's name. I, of course, want to not have to type that again a second time. So I don't want a text input here. I actually want to use what we call a link field. We'll talk more about that when we link it up in the template editor. But that allows me to link to the value that is already created above in the first paragraph. And for the address, we need a text input. In fact, all of the rest of these are text inputs. So I'm just going to copy and paste for these remaining fields. All right. So there's a few more fields in the signature block. We're going to create those manually when we import the document. So I'm just going to go ahead and save. We'll save this document. We'll close it. Now let's go back to Legito and let's create our template. So we're done with our workflow there. So I'm going to go to the templates tab. You can see I've only got that existing contractor agreement template, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new template suite. And for brevity's sake, we'll just call it NDA and say create. That will create a new template suite in Legito. And it takes me to the template suite administration page. So you might notice that name if you're new to Legito, template suite. It's a template suite because you can add one or more templates to that suite. So I may have a suite of documents that I need to create. And so I may have, for example, in a company formation, I might have bylaws and a stockholder purchase agreement and, meeting notes and other things that I might create as part of a company formation package of documents for a new corp. And so I can have a number of output documents. I can also create input documents as well. So a form that gathers all of the questions, and then I link the values into my document templates in that same template suite. So I've got different properties I can set up on that. I've also got properties I can set up on the suite as a whole. I can set a description or search keywords. I can set up a group to share this with automatically. Janet's actually going to do that. That can be useful sometimes if you're kind of working as a group and the approvers, you want them to always see the documents even before they're sent to them for approver. They'll show up in their list. So we'll go ahead and add the approvers group here. And then what that means is any document created from this template will automatically be shared with that group of users. Here you can see I can assign the workflow. So we'll go ahead and choose that NDA workflow. And then I've got some additional settings. I'm not going to add any of the rest of those. But what I do want to do is I'm going to add one more setting on the template itself, our NDA template. I've got template level settings that I can set as well. And for that, I want to add my ESignature solution, DocuSign. So we're going to sign this with DocuSign later. So I want to go ahead and add that. So now Janet's got her suite set up, properties configured. Now she just needs to create the template content. So we're going to go ahead and edit that template. And then Janet, as she opens that template editor for edit, because it's a brand new template, Legito automatically prompts for a Word document to start with. So of course, 99% of the time when you create a template in Legito, you're going to import some document that you already have. And so what we'll do is we'll go to that folder where we save that document, and we'll just drag and drop that marked up document here into our import screen. Under the import settings, there are a couple of settings that we'll check here. Styles is always checked by default. That's a good idea to have that set. I'm going to go ahead and import the numbering scheme for the template as well. And I'm going to save this into Word as an advanced layout design, as an imported Word. Save the document as an advanced layout design in Legito. If you're not aware, an advanced layout design in Legito is a great way to have a specific set of styles that it uses when it exports, as well as a layout. So you'll see when we get our exported Word document, it'll have a Legito logo in the top right that comes from that layout design that it creates here as a part of this step as well. So let's go ahead and import. And there is my non-disclosure agreement content pulled into the Legito template editor. So for those that are new to Legito, a quick pause here to talk about this template editor. A template imported into Legito is a structural document in our template editor. So we're not in a Word document here. We're in our template editor. And the structure in Legito is called clauses. So the container elements that make up the structure are called clauses. So on the left-hand side, you can see a list of clauses, and those are hierarchical. So I could put articles, and then I put paragraphs and articles, subparagraphs and paragraphs, etc. And that hierarchy is for numbering. So we can see here in the confidential information section, if I mouse over it, you can see the container elements around those clauses, and then some actions or handles and buttons up above that I can click on. So I can click on that to select the specific clause, which happens to be a paragraph. It's second level. So if I mouse over that, you can see I'm on the second level, which is important for that numbering. Inside of a clause, there are elements. So if we go look at this first clause or this first paragraph clause, you can see I've got multiple elements, and I can click on those specific elements to select them and set specific properties on those elements. So you can see up at the top, I've got a menu bar that lets me set. We'll see in a little bit when we're going to add conditions. We can set a name for a specific element. We can set different properties on these elements. And then at the very top, I've got my undo, redo, save, publish, test to be able to test the template, and a find and a link out to some help on the right. And then you can see below my clauses and elements are my elements that I can actually create. And I can drag and drop these into the template as well, which we will do some of that in this document. I must have left off a closing bracket there, so we'll leave that out. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to now go through and make sure we can create all of our fields and add our logic. You can see our first group of fields here were created for us automatically. And like I said, Legito does do some automatic variable naming for you. We're going to go ahead and just name these what we want. We'll call that agreement date. We'll call this disclosing party, which is already set. We'll call this governing law. We'll call this entity type. Our first paragraph is basically already complete. Now what I would do, so Janet needs to be able to refer back to the notes, and she saved that original document with all of the comments. So let's open that up so that we can easily refer back to the notes that I sent her. So in confidential information, if we look at this first comment, it says, okay, we need to ask the user what type of information is treated as confidential. Is it all shared information? Is it only information marked confidential? or specific information. And then these paragraphs need to be conditional based on that question. So let's add that into Legito. So the first thing we need is a question. So we can drag our question in. We'll put it right above that paragraph. So just easy drag and drop, and you see the yellow hint where to drop it. And then a question, you simply add the question content and then the responses. So what type of information is treated as confidential? Then we can just add our responses. We'll say all information, only information marked confidential, or specific information. All right, so now we've got a question with our responses, and we simply need to make these paragraphs A, B, and C conditional based on those responses. So to add a condition, I'm going to select the element that I want to add that condition to. So let's start with paragraph A, and I go to conditions. And you can see right here, I can click create condition to create a condition, but even better is Legito is going to contextually create some suggestions for me. And these top 3 suggestions happen to be exactly what I need. So I can actually go to this third suggestion, and I can select that. And now I've added a condition to this first paragraph. You can see these container borders typically are visible only when you mouse over it. But now there's a permanent green border around that clause. And that's Legito's way to prompt to you, hey, there's been some logic added to this clause. And so I know there's a condition or repeat added to this particular clause. I can go back to that condition by clicking on conditions. And you can see a condition in Legito is just complete the sentence. So add the selected paragraph to the document if the question and the NDA named what type of information is treated is set to all information. In fact, rather than use the suggestion, let's create one manually on the second paragraph. So we'll say, add the selected paragraph to the document if question. So in the template NDA named what type of information is set to only information marked as confidential. I have a lot of different ways I can create these conditions. I can also drag and drop. So you can see here on the left-hand side, there's this conditions panel. Let's close that. This conditions panel gives me that, those same suggestions, and I can actually drag and drop onto a specific item. So you can see as I mouse over an item, it'll highlight which one I want. I want this paragraph or this clause, so I can drag that on there. So now I've got 3 conditions. So with that, we'll go back and save, and we can test our template at any time. So it's a good idea to save regularly and test regularly to make sure the work that you're doing is working. So if you're new to Legito, this is going to be your first look at the Smart Document Editor. But I'm going to go ahead and click Test. And this takes me into the Smart Document Editor, lets the user see it just like the end user would see it. So the template author is testing the end user experience here. So our Smart Document Editor has got some smart navigation along the left-hand side, some menus along the top. You can see the workflow stages that we created are available right here. My primary actions on the right. I'm just going to view what I've done here, where I can select a specific date. I can add my disclosing party. I can select the entity type and the governing law. But I want to look mostly at that question I just created to make sure my logic is correct. And you can see what type of information is treated as confidential. All information is selected by default, the first option. I can actually change a property on that. Only information marked as confidential or specific information. If I change that, we can see the document change based on my selection. So if I choose specific information, then I get that paragraph with all of the sub-bullets on specific information. Now, we've got 2 more things we need to change with this specific section to make it dynamic the way that it's needed for our document. So I'm just going to close this and go back to our template. And let's refer back to our document for a moment. So referring back to our document on this third section, it says, okay, use this paragraph and subparagraphs if it's specific information, but either prompt the user to select or allow them to strike the specific subparagraphs. So it gives Mark's given Janet an option here. Hey, you can either add a question that lets them select which of these to include, or you can strike them, allow the user to just remove them manually from the document in some way. And then down at the bottom of this section, of course, it said it would be great if the user could add additional paragraphs. So maybe I didn't know that that could be done in Legito, but Janet does know that, hey, we can add this in and make it dynamic and allow you to add as many additional paragraphs as you want. So Janet's going to add that into the template now. So let's go back. So first, these paragraphs, I want to make them optional. You may have noticed a little icon next to these paragraphs. That is actually a button that does exactly that, allows paragraphs to be optional to the end user. So they're all mandatory right now. But if I click this button, you can see it toggles it as optional, and it creates this green eye that will be able to be clicked by the user to toggle this paragraph off in the document. So we're just going to, rather than add a question, we could just click that on each of these paragraphs. So that we've just made them optional. We'll look at that just in just a moment. But then I also want to be able to say, I want this paragraph to be able to be repeated as many times as the user clicks a button to add additional paragraphs. So what we want to do is we want to add a button on the same level as this paragraph, and then we're going to make this paragraph repeat based on the click of that button. So looking at this paragraph, you can see we're at the third level. So this is a subparagraph. And so I want to add another subparagraph to my document. So I can just drag and drop. And I can remove the numbering on this because it's just going to be a button for the user to click. And I can create a new button, and I can add whatever text I want here, add another item. I can even give it the name that I want, add item. And then we don't need this text element, so we'll just delete it. And now I want to make this paragraph repeat based on the click of this button. So I can click on that paragraph, and then you can see I've got a repeat tag or tab here. And then again, Legito is great at contextually suggesting based on something that I've just done. So I can go ahead and click repeat every time the user clicks add another item. That's what I want. And that adds the repeat. Again, I could have hit create repeat and just filled out these drop downs, but it's even faster when Legito does it for you. All right, so now I've got a repeat. So you can see that paragraph keeps the green border to let me know some logic's been applied, and I've got my button. So let's just save and test really quickly. And we'll be able to see that now if we choose specific information, now we've got optional paragraphs that the user can strike from the document. And you can see when they strike them, my numbering is automatic, so it automatically renumbers. And then now I've got a button down at the bottom of this section that says add another item. And if I click that button, then I get another item that I can type in some information. And I can add as many as I want. And then I can delete them by clicking that X. So now we've added that functionality Mark's asked for in this section to be able to add custom paragraphs there. Of course, you can see the template author's got complete control over what's mandatory, what's optional, what the user can do. That's, one of the great benefits of document assembly is to make sure your documents are coming out the way that you want. You can even do things like, we're not going to do it in this specific document today, but you can even do things like add required fields, add field validation, warnings, prompts based on specific input. You can add help text to specific fields to help the user along as well. We've got limited time, so we want to make sure we get to everything. So I'm going to move on. Now, we've got a few more things to look at this document. So Janet would refer back to, okay, so in section 3, we need to prompt the user for whether it's an indefinite period or a specific number of months or years. And then we'll have to define that months and years in the template as well and add that question. Then after that, it's just the signature block. So we're almost done. So Janet's going to go back to Legito, find paragraph 3E. It's right here. And you can see she's going to need to break out this shall survive all the way down to here, or shall remain in effect, and then blank months or years from the date hereof. So first thing we need is we need to replace these two items here with actual inputs. And so I can drag and drop, or I can replace. I'll show you two different ways that can be done. So I'm going to drag and drop a text input for the 6. And you can see I can drag this in. We'll put it, well, missed my drop. We'll put it there. And then I could delete this 6 because I don't need it. But even better, rather than having to do that operation, I can actually right-click months that I want to replace. and I can go replace, and I want to replace this with a select in this case, that I'm going to add the options months or years to. So months or years. I've got my inputs. Now I just need to add a question and then make the language appropriately conditional, whether I have an indefinite period or a specified period. So let's add a question. And for that question, we'll add period. What is the period for non-disclosure? We'll say indefinite or specified. We'll just add that. Add a question mark on that. Now we need to add some logic to this down below. So first thing you might notice, I can't add a condition to this as it is because I don't want this first. I always want this bit to be in the document. So what I can do is I can actually split this. So I right click and go split. And what that's going to do is create two different text elements where I split it. So now I've got one here that I need to split again because I want to go to that period. So this is an indefinite period language, and then these remaining elements are the specified. So again, now we can add our logic to that. So we can go conditions, and there we go. Nice again, that is right there for us. This is for indefinite, and then this will be for specified. Now I've only selected one element, and I can click that there, and now you know I got to add it 3 more times, but I can select multiple elements with a simple control click. So if I click on these elements and use the control key while I'm clicking, then I can actually set this condition on all of those elements. So now we've got conditions there on those elements. Scroll down. We don't have too much left to do. We've got our link. So remember in the markup, we added this link field. We want to link this to the disclosing party. So what that does is it tells Legito, hey, I want to link this to the text input in this template, name disclosing party, and pull that value. And then we've got address, phone number. We're going to put in contact name and contact title. These are important because we're going to link to these in the signature block. So we're going to name these 2 fields. If we're not linking to it, we don't necessarily have to provide a specific name. For brevity's sake, I'm not going to add names to all of those fields. And then let's go to our signature block. And down in the signature block, we need to add in the date. We're just going to use the agreement date here. You could have this be part of the signature block, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that date value, and we'll pull in a link field again to each of these locations. So simple drag and drop, and I can create a link to a date in the NDA agreement date. And you can see here, I could have selected both of these at once and done it, or I can just copy this link and paste it on this field. So now I've linked both of those to the dates, and we just need to get the contact name and title here. So we'll do our split here to keep our comma. Split twice, and then we can replace this with a link, and we can replace this with a link, and we can put in name and title, which we just added. So again, we've got these great contextual suggestions from Legito. So this is the contact name, and this is the contact title. All right, with that, the template is largely complete. There's a few more adjustments we're going to make here in a moment, but if I just save this and test this, I could fill this out now, and I'll get all of the information I need. There's a couple of other things that I want to make sure happen, and so I'm going to add these into the template. First, I want to make it work for ESignature. Now, I only want to have to sign this once for our demo today, so I'm going to use an image here for Mark. So I'm going to actually upload an image, and I'm going to grab that image here. And so you can see there is an image control in Legito, and there's some text here I'm going to delete. And then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some text that will be the placeholder for the ESignature, telling Legito Legito telling DocuSign where to sign. So this is documented in our help file, but if you're using DocuSign or Adobe Sign or some other ESignature solution, we have a specific syntax for where those signatures will go. So I'm going to add that there. The last thing that Janet wants to think about is tagging before she creates this document. So tagging is important for a number of things. I can add specific metadata fields in my document record based on tags that I input into the template itself. I can tag any piece of information in this document template to gather that data. And it can go to specific system fields, or I can custom create tags with any name that I want. So for example, if I go to disclosing party, I want the disclosing party to show up after the name of my document or after the name of my file name that gets downloaded. So I can actually choose document name and file name and tag those tags on this piece of data. But I also maybe want this to be a custom tag called disclosing party. I've already added that tag previous to this, but I could just type in any name and create that tag. So now I've added 3 tags to this single piece of data. And then maybe I want to tag a few other things. I want to tag the agreement date. I want to tag the contact and the address and their email. So let's do that. So we'll go to the disclosing party here. We'll tag their address. We're going to tag the contact name. I'm going to tag this as the first party name. You could use the first party name as the business name as well. I'm going to use this because of the way it displays in Legito. It will display the first party name as subtitle under the document name. And since I'm using the disclosing party name as the document name, I'm going to use first party name here. And then I'm going to use for the email, first party email. Janet is going to set up these tags, and now she's all done with her template and is ready to publish it and try it out. Oh, I'm gonna tag one more thing. This first paragraph is pretty descriptive of who this is with, so we can use, and you can see even a suggestion from Legito. We can use that whole paragraph as a summary tag, which will go to a summary tag in the document editor. So we're going to go ahead and save that. Now that this document's ready, we can publish this. So publishing it, saving it along the way, I can do whatever changes I want. And in the template editor, actually, every time I save, you can see every save gets a version. And when I'm ready to publish, I simply click publish, and that will make my current saved version available to users to use within the system. So now we've built a template. I know we've got about 15 minutes left. So the things left to do are test that template end to end, have Mark actually go through an approval. And so let's say Janet, she's created this document now. She's added her workflow. It's ready for e-signature. What she wants to do now is actually create an NDA. And we're going to suppose that she can go ahead and test this with the workflow and send it to Mark. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new NDA. So now in my dashboard, which just a brief mention on this, dashboards are completely configurable and customizable in Legito. So we've got a nice, simple workspace that's relatively new here. But I might even set up an NDA dashboard where I can add some specific widgets that show me how many NDAs we have, how many are expiring soon, how many have expired. I can show only the NDAs on that dashboard and get the information that's pertinent to me, so that if Mark and Janet are the only ones that work with NDAs, maybe they use that dashboard, but other users use a default dashboard. So Legito does allow you to customize this dashboard. Let's go ahead and create one. All right, so now we've got our NDA completed, and now we can use it as an end user. So Janet says, okay, I actually need to create one of these NDAs, and we're going to create it with Blue Sky Productions. There's lots of production companies in Atlanta. I'm going to go ahead and leave that default information. We'll leave all information. We've already seen how the repeats work there. I think typically you're going to leave most NDAs with that all information. We'll come down here. We'll say it's a specified period of time, though, of 24 months. So you can see we've got months or years in our drop down there. So you can see that language change. Also, you might notice that I can add comments in anywhere to this document as I'm filling it out. So the document editor really has this capability for the end user to choose based on the selections, but also add comments. There could be help on these fields to help the user along, but an NDA is a pretty simple document. We'll fill this out. 23 Main Street. And we'll say our contact is going to be James Davis, be the CEO. Now, just because I want to be able to sign this from my DocuSign account for simplicity's sake and get the email, I'm going to put my email address in here. oops, I'm actually going to put it in here, Mark at Legito, just so that I can sign this as that user in DocuSign. Then I can see my completed document. You can see our placeholder here. It will be white text in the downloaded document. So what I can do here is I can download as an example. So Janet wants to see what that completed NDA might look like before she sends it to Mark for review. So she can download that Word document at any time. You're going to see here in this workflow that Janet, Janet or Mark or whoever's working this, they rarely actually will in real use download this document, because we've got an end-to-end workflow here all the way to signature. Nobody really needs to download the document. Only the final parties are going to see it in DocuSign when it's getting signed. Everybody else can review it right inside Legito with that smart document. But if I want to see what that final document will look like, I can download it. You can see we've got nicely formatted document with the Legito logo on it, with all of the information and the signature down on it. All right, so Janet says, okay, this is all done. I'm gonna go back to Legito. Maybe what Janet wants to do now is let's go ahead and move this into the review stage, and we can let Mark take a look at this document. So I can appoint approvers. What that's going to do is notify Mark that the document is ready for approval. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Edge. We'll go ahead and have Janet close this document, refresh our dashboard here, and we can see there is her document. You can see because we tagged that summary tag automatically came into this document record. But let's go to Edge. We'll refresh here. You can see I actually have a notification that tells me that Janet started the approval process on this document. I could click that and go right to that document record. It also happens to be right at the top of my document list here. I can see that it's ready for me to approve. I can actually approve from right here if I wanted to, but I want to review the document and make any notes. So we can see here in the approval stage, track changes is actually mandatory, like we set up in our workflow. So it's on and grayed out, so I can't change it. So if I were to make a change, so let's say, hey, they're actually Blue Skies Production Inc., that will get redlined automatically. So any change working through in this review stage is going to get redlined. So maybe I go back and forth with Janet a little bit on some of these changes, make some comments, but rather than do it, I'm just going to accept that, and we'll save that change so that I can approve this. So as a user that's going to approve this, now Mark has an opportunity to review what Janet's put together before it goes out to the client for signature, and then approve. So I can approve it. And then it's automatically approved and can start signing. I'm going to let Janet sign it. So we'll just close this. As the approver, I'm done with this document, and I'm just going to wait for it to go through signature. So Janet's will be notified that it's ready for signature. So if we switch back to Chrome as Janet, she's got a notification saying, hey, it's been approved. And now I can view this document to send it off for signature. So I can see it's approved. It's in ready for signature. I can start signing, and I can sign with DocuSign. You can see it automatically picked up that name and the email address based on the tagging that I did for ESignature. So I don't even have to type that in, and I can send this via DocuSign for ESignature. So it's been sent through DocuSign. Off my screen, I'm getting a DocuSign email with a link. I can click and open that up. And DocuSign, standard DocuSign signature. I'm going to sign it again as Mark here, not James Davis. But I can sign that and finish. I need to adjust my font size there to put that signature in the right place in my template. But other than that, I've signed that document. What will happen is that signed document will actually come back to Legito. It takes just a second for it to come back, but as Janet knows that document is signed, at some point, we're going to see that automatically come back, and this document record will be updated. While I'm waiting for that, for those new to Legito, on my Manage Documents page is where I can view all of my documents and see the status and filter and search for specific documents and take action on them. So if I look at this now, it's come back, so I can see the executed pop up. I'll have a notification say it's been signed. And that signed document is automatically attached back into the document record, and it's automatically moved into the executed stage. Then I have things I can do with this in document management that we didn't even look at today, like set the expiration date and automatically be notified for this document. I can set up additional document record fields and customize this document record as well. One note on document complexity that I didn't show in this template today. We had very simple logic, but I want to note that Legito can obviously be done with very complex templates as well. You saw some of the logos on our customer slide there. I mean, we have companies doing audit documentation for finance companies. We have trade finance companies doing loan documentation, law firms doing estate planning documents, wills, real estate companies doing real estate documentation. As you can imagine, and knowing your businesses, whatever they may be, those are very complex documents. We can handle that complex logic as well. When you build out those conditions, you can build compound conditions and nested conditions of logic in those template suites as well. So we took a very simple use case today, but you can see if I wasn't stopping to show everything that I showed along the way, Janet can take that document that was sent to her by Mark and turn it into a template really in much less than an hour. So Janet took a document that was used regularly in their business, that was marked up by a user, and in less than an hour, imported it into Legito, tagged it to be able to extract metadata out of it, assigned a workflow, tagged it for DocuSign so that she's got an end-to-end process with this document to make sure that it is error-free, so that it's built in the way that it should be, it's consistent in how it looks, and it's generated in a matter of minutes, getting a business approval from the appropriate business users along the way. So I hope you appreciated that end-to-end walkthrough of from start to finish, a document marked up all the way to the completed document and workflow process. And I'm going to turn the time back over to Charles for any questions we may have had.
Thanks, Mark. So I know time is tight. If people need to drop off towards the end of the hour, please do, but we'll see if we can get some questions in first. And feel free to follow up by email later on, folks, if you have any questions that occur to you just after we close or something. Mark, first one, we were looking at NDAs there. Obviously, the classic thing with an NDA is it gets sent out to another organization at some point. Can you just talk to us about whether that other organization has to be a Legito user, whether there's any licenses, or how that would work from somebody, Acme, who receives one of these requests, doesn't even know what Legito is. What do they experience?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So one thing we didn't touch on so far was how to share externally to an external party. To do that really quickly, this one is already locked down because it's executed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another NDA. And I'll just put in ABC. We'll just put in 2 pieces of information. And save this. And we'll move it into the review stage because I think we had sharing disabled on that draft stage. So in the review stage here, I'm going to go to sharing. And we do have the ability to share externally in Legito as well. Sorry, could we have the, just looking at my stream, could we make sure that the screen is showing large at the moment? Thank you. So I've created a new document. I'm in the sharing window right now in Legito, and we have this ability to share externally. So when I share externally, I can choose some options to share this to an external user, and they're going to get a secure link to access this document. And what that means is they're not getting a login. They don't have to register. But if I copy this link and I just open an incognito window of my browser and paste that link, this is what that external user would see. So they would get this link that they could click that would take them right into this document. And I can choose whether or not they can edit this document, whether they can make changes. I can choose to display menu bars or not for those end users as well, and share this with my external users. Good question, Charles. So you absolutely can share it with external parties. They do not need a login.
Thank you, Mark. Of course, one of the distinguishing features about Legito is a lot of that work when you're creating the templates is done in the template editor. Some other solutions out there, that work is done directly in Word. For those people just looking to see what's out there, do you just want to say a bit more about the advantages and why we've chosen to use the template editor for that instead of have people working in Word?
Absolutely. So there's a number of advantages. So one big primary advantage means that we have complete control over the document data in Legito, which allows for that document data to be completely indexable and searchable. So any template and document generated from that template are full text indexed in Legito. And so any piece of metadata can be extracted from that document, as you saw in the document tagging. Any piece of data can be searched in that document as well. Another great advantage is mobility, right? We are not dependent on Microsoft Word embedded in some location and trying to work within the boundaries of what Microsoft Word allows. And so it gives us the flexibility to use our editor in a browser and use it from anywhere, and then not be beholden to the rules of Microsoft Word to a certain degree, which would give us flexibility to go to other document types as exports, as well as do things that maybe Microsoft Word doesn't allow within their system. And so I think those are some of the primary advantages of why that's important. But the structured data piece is really crucial for a lot of businesses because they want access to that data from their documents. And so if it's fully indexed in Legito, it gives you a lot of accessibility to that data.
Thanks, Mark. Now, obviously, what we were doing today was showing what can be done in the space of an hour. It wasn't a sort of a teaching. You're not expecting everybody to have grasped every step along the way. But
Right.
If somebody was putting themselves in the shoes of a new Legito user tasked with creating templates like an NDA, in your experience, how long does it take somebody to get as well, maybe not as fluent as you, but to get fluent enough for the tool not to get in the way, so that they can do their job intuitively? How long's that process take?
So that's a great question. I think the answer is it depends a little bit, right, on the amount of complexity that they're wanting to handle in their documents. Understanding and learning the tool can happen very quickly. So we provide some courses that are just available in our Learning Center, and you can actually go right to the Learning Center from Legito by clicking on the user icon. And then when I go to that Learning Center, you'll see there are Power Educational courses, Power User educational courses. The first 3 courses there you can complete in a number of hours tops. That will give you, basic information on how to use Legito, how to create fields, how to create a template, how to manage styles from a high level. And then, of course, from there, it's about using the system and learning some of the tips and tricks as you go as well. And so we continue to add new courses that will help with some of those things. We provide a knowledge base for users as well. So I think it really is a matter of days to get comfortable with the initial part, and then just the usage over time gets you all of the advanced user capabilities.
Thanks, Mark. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Thank you very much to Mark. As I say, do follow up with any email questions that occur to you afterwards. And I'm just going to have one more shameless plug for our conference in June, because we do look forward to meeting some folk in real life. The thing about these remote sessions is we can't see you and you can't talk to other customers, but you can change all that in June. You'll be able to talk to each other. Don't just take our word for it, but hear from others as well. So thank you very much, and we look forward to hopefully meeting some of you in June, but do follow up with any questions.
Thank you, everyone.